If you had all the money in the world, what would you buy? A golden jet, a palace with 1,800 rooms. How about 7,000 luxury cars? For the Sultan of Brunei, that's not a dream. It's just a Tuesday morning. Meet Sultan Hassan al-Bolkiah, the man with a $30 billion net worth. This guy's got more money than most countries, and he ain't afraid to spend it. We're talking about a dude who drops $20 million a day on fresh flowers for his palaces. Yeah, you heard that right. Palaces, plural. But that's nothing compared to his car collection. This Sultan's got 7,000 rides worth over $4 billion, and don't even get me started on his yachts. One of them costs $650 million and has its own missile defense system. Crazy, right? So buckle up, because we're about to take a wild ride through the most insane lifestyle you've ever seen. The Sultan of Brunei's life is so extra, it'll make your head spin. From fishing villages to petrostate. You might be wondering how someone gets so rich they can buy 7,000 cars. Well, it all started with some weird goo bubbling up in a creek. Back in 1929, a Shell oil explorer was checking out Brunei when he spotted this tar-like stuff. Turns out it was black gold, oil, and that discovery changed everything. Before the oil, Brunei was just a bunch of fishing villages. They made money selling spices, wood and pearls from the jungle, not exactly big bucks. But that oil find? It was like winning the lottery, but way bigger. By the 1960s, Brunei had hundreds of oil wells pumping out cash. And then the 1970s hit. Oil prices went through the roof, and Brunei's economy went nuts. We're talking 25% growth every year. The country's wealth was doubling annually. It's like if your savings account grew so fast you became a millionaire in a couple years. Enter Sultan Hassan al-Bolkiah. This guy's been ruling Brunei for over 50 years. That's longer than any other monarch alive today. And he's been busy. During his reign, he turned the royal family into the richest monarchy on earth. We're talking $30 billion rich. But here's the wild part. Brunei went from backwater to baller status without all the drama. No corruption, no chaos. The Sultan and his crew ran a tight ship. They managed that oil money like pros. Now, the Sultan isn't just a figurehead. He's got full control. He's the boss of everything in Brunei, including that trillion-dollar oil and gas industry. Yeah, you heard that right. Trillion, with a T. It's basically his private company. Want to drill for oil in Brunei? Gotta ask the Sultan. Want to buy some of that sweet natural gas? Better get his okay first. Every major deal goes through him. And it's not just oil making him rich. The Sultan and his family own big chunks of Brunei's biggest companies. They've got Royal Brunei Airlines and a bunch of other money-making businesses. So what's all this wealth done for Brunei? The place is like a real-life Wakanda now. Gold-topped palaces everywhere. The government's handing out subsidies left and right. It's gone from humble beginnings to a seriously loaded country. But here's the kicker. Brunei's pumping out 160,000 barrels of oil every single day. That's a river of cash flowing straight into the national piggy bank. And a big chunk of that ends up in the Sultan's pocket, the world's most impressive car collection. This ain't your average rich guy garage. The Sultan's got one-off custom rides from Rolls-Royce, Ferrari, Porsche, Lamborghini and Koenigsegg. We're talking cars so rare and expensive, they make regular supercars look like Hot Wheels. Ever seen a Rolls-Royce covered in 24-karat gold? The Sultan's got one, and that's just the start. Some of his rides are dripping in diamonds. Yeah, you heard that right. Diamonds on a car. Because when you're this rich, why not? But here's the crazy part. The Sultan's got so many cars, he can't even drive them all. Some of these beauties get used once and then go straight to storage. It's like buying a Picasso and sticking it in a closet. Now you might be wondering, where does he keep all these cars? Good question. The Sultan's got 110 air-conditioned garages just for his collection. That's more garages than most people have socks. But wait, there's more. In the capital city, there are 5 extra facilities just for his stretched limos and jewel-covered Rolls-Royces. It's like a 5-star hotel, but for cars. Maintaining this fleet ain't cheap. The Sultan spends $2 million a year on a team of 30 car specialists. These guys are like the Navy SEALs of the car world. Their whole job is keeping these rides in tip-top shape. And get this, the Sultan doesn't just buy cars off the lot. He tells car makers exactly what he wants. He's like, hey Ferrari, make me something no one else has. And they do it. He's funded whole wish list programs for these companies. It's hard to wrap your head around this kind of wealth. Most people save up for years to buy one nice car. The Sultan's got thousands. And not just any cars. The rarest, most expensive rides on the planet. But here's the thing, with 7,000 cars, the Sultan could drive a different one every day for 19 years straight. And he'd still have cars left over. It's like having a new car for every day of the week, every week of the year, for almost 2 decades. Floating palaces. Let's start with the Time Sultan. This beast cost $500 million. Yeah, you heard that right. $500 million for a boat. It's 165 meters long and has 4 decks. But that's just the start. This thing's got 2 grand reception halls for when the Sultan wants to play host. And get this, it's got 12 luxury suites with 180 degrees ocean views. Because when you're stupid rich, why settle for a porthole? But the real crazy stuff is inside. The Time Sultan's got gold leaf ceilings and custom chandeliers from some fancy French company called Baccarat. It's like Versailles, but it floats. And fish tanks. This yacht's got multiple aquariums with rare species flown in from all over. There's even a giant aquarium wrapped around a solid gold spiral staircase in the lobby. It's like being inside a super expensive snow globe. When it comes to food, the Sultan ain't messing around. The Time Sultan's got over 20 different places to eat, all with top-of-the-line kitchens. It's like having a whole food court. But every restaurant has Michelin stars. But here's the kicker. This yacht's got bulletproof windows and missile disruption tech. Because when you're this rich, you gotta watch your back, even in the middle of the ocean. Now, $500 million for a boat is insane, right? Well, hold on to your hats, because the Sultan's other yacht makes that one look like a tugboat. It's called the Abdul Wahab, and it costs $650 million. That's more than some countries' entire economies. This monster is 201 meters long. It's so big, no marina on Earth can dock it. They had to build a special deep water terminal just for this thing. It's got these fancy anchors that let it park up on remote beaches. Because when you own a country, sometimes you need a vacation. The Abdul Wahab's got stuff you wouldn't believe. There's a concert hall inside with a spinning stage. It's got gold elevators going up 10 decks. There are glass atriums with floor-to-ceiling fish tanks. It's like someone took a Las Vegas casino, shrunk it down and stuck it on a boat. But wait, there's more. This yacht's got ballrooms where famous artists perform. It's got tons of restaurants serving food from all over the world. And get this, it's got garages for the Sultan's custom Rolls Royces, because apparently driving your land yacht on your sea yacht is a thing when you're this loaded. A fleet fit for a king. These jets have first-class seats made by fancy Italian designers. We're talking fully lie-flat beds and 40-inch monitors. It's like a 5-star hotel suite, but 30,000 feet in the air. And the food? Forget airplane meals. These planes have in-flight chef kitchens. The Sultan can have gourmet meals cooked up while cruising over the ocean. Talk about dining with a view. But it ain't all about luxury. The Sultan's jets are decked out with some serious tech. They've got automated disaster suppression systems and missile disruption technology. Because when you're this rich, you gotta stay safe even in the sky. Now, for getting around Brunei, the Sultan doesn't just hop in a car. Nah, he's got a fleet of Sikorsky helicopters. These ain't regular choppers. They're custom fitted with all kinds of fancy stuff. It's like taking a limo ride, but way cooler. And get this, all these planes and choppers, they're part of Royal Brunei Airlines' VIP state fleet. So when important people visit Brunei, they get to fly in style too. But here's the crazy part. The Sultan's got around 100 aircraft in total. Jets, props, helicopters, you name it, he's got it. It's like he's got his own private air force. Now you might be thinking lots of billionaires have private jets. True, but nobody's got a fleet like the Sultan's. While other rich folks are happy with 1 or 2 planes, this guy's got 120. It's not even a fair comparison. And he uses all this flying power to zip between his palaces and properties all over the world. Imagine being able to wake up in Brunei, have lunch in London, and dinner in New York, all without ever setting foot in a regular airport. Daily life when money is no object. While you're struggling to get out of bed, the Sultan's waking up to a palace filled with fresh flowers, and we're not talking about a few bouquets. This dude drops $20 million a day on flowers. Yeah, you heard that right, $20 million every single day just on flowers. That's more than most people make in a lifetime, and he's spending it on plants that'll be gone tomorrow. But the craziness doesn't stop there. When it comes to breakfast, forget about your boring cereal. The Sultan's got a team of personal chefs ready to whip up whatever he wants. We're talking imported delicacies from all over the world. Italian truffles, Russian caviar, Kobe Wagyu beef, it's all on the menu every single day. And these ain't your average meals. The Sultan's known for throwing events where a single plate costs $1,000. That's right, $1,000 for one meal. You could buy a decent used car for what this guy spends on dinner. But hey, when you're worth $30 billion, why not go all out? The Sultan's even into food art. He's dropped $500,000 on a single cake before. Imagine spending $500,000 on something you're gonna eat. It's like buying a Lamborghini and then immediately driving it off a cliff. Now you might think the Sultan just sits around all day eating fancy food and smelling flowers, but nah, he's got royal duties to take care of. He oversees state matters, meets with important people, that kind of thing. But even his work life is luxurious. He's got meetings in rooms fancier than most five-star hotels. When he's not doing the king thing, the Sultan's all about his hobbies. He loves playing polo, and not just any polo. He's played with Prince Charles. It's like a royal boys club, but with horses. And if polo ain't enough exercise, don't worry. The Sultan's got over 100 masseuses and fitness coaches on standby. Feeling a little tense? Just snap your fingers and boom, instant massage. Want a quick workout? There's probably a world-class trainer waiting outside the door. But here's the thing about the Sultan's life. It's so luxurious, it's almost hard to imagine. Most of us worry about paying rent or saving up for a vacation. This guy's biggest problem is probably deciding which of his 7,000 cars to drive or which $1 million meal to eat. Istana Nurul Iman's got over 2 million square feet of floor space. That's like 38 football fields under one roof. And rooms? This palace has got 1,800 of them. For comparison, Buckingham Palace has 775 rooms and the White House? Just 132. The Sultan's place is in a whole other league, but size ain't everything. This palace is dripping with luxury. We're talking 24-karat gold trimmings everywhere. The doors, Brazilian wood with sterling silver inlays. The rugs, hand-sewn with golden silk threads. Even the floors are extra. They've got semi-precious stones embedded in the marble. It's like walking on jewelry. And the chandeliers? Oh boy. The Sultan's got a secret room with over 3,000 diamond and crystal chandeliers. That's more chandeliers than most people have light bulbs in their whole house. Now you might be thinking, why does one guy need so much space? Well, Istana Nurul Iman ain't just for living. It's also where the Sultan runs the country. There's offices and stuff for the government inside. Plus, when important people come to visit, they stay in the palace's 200 luxury suites. It's like a five-star hotel, but way fancier. But the real crazy stuff is the extras. This palace has got Olympic-sized swimming pools, tennis courts, and even its own polo fields. There's man-made beaches with imported white sand. It's got its own mosque that can fit 1,500 people. And don't even get me started on the garages. The Sultan's got whole floors just for parking his cars. Now here's a wild fact. The Sultan had this place built to be 3 times bigger than the Palace of Versailles. Why? Just 'cause he could. When you're worth $30 billion, you can do stuff like that. But living in the world's biggest palace ain't cheap. The Sultan's got a whole army of staff just to keep the place running. There's floors of the palace that are just for the workers. It's like a small city inside a building. And get this, the palace is up on a hill, so it's got amazing views of Brunei's capital and the rainforest around it. It's like the Sultan wanted to be able to see his whole kingdom from his living room, a global real estate empire. The Sultan owns a whole street of fancy houses right next to Kensington Palace Gardens. We're not talking about some regular homes either. These are 10-bedroom villas that probably cost more than most people will make in their entire lives. But that's just the beginning. The Sultan's got a Scottish castle that's so cool, they used it to film Gladiator. Yeah, that Gladiator. He's basically living in a movie set. And if that's not enough, he's got one of the fanciest places in Spain. We're talking about a spot that's been used by royalty since the 1800s. It's like owning a piece of history, but way more expensive. Now, if you're thinking, okay, but what about winter sports? Don't worry, the Sultan's got that covered too. He owns a dozen ski chalets in the Swiss Alps. That's right, a dozen. Most people are lucky to rent a cabin for a weekend, and this guy's got enough places to host the whole Winter Olympics. But wait, there's more. The Sultan's not just into old world charm, he's got some serious Hollywood cred too. He owns the Beverly Hills Hotel in Los Angeles. You know, that pink palace where all the stars hang out. He dropped over $100 million on that place like it was pocket change. And he didn't stop there. The Sultan's got his fingers in some of the fanciest hotels around the world. We're talking the Plaza in New York, the Dorchester in London, and Hotel Eden in Rome. It's like he's collecting famous buildings like they're Pokemon cards. But here's where it gets really crazy. The Sultan's got entire tropical private islands. Yeah, you heard that right. Islands. Plural. He's gifted them to his queen and princesses. These aren't just any islands either. They're off the coast of Australia's Gold Coast and Malaysia, and they've got multi-million-dollar villas on them. It's like he's building his own country, one luxury island at a time. And get this, the Sultan's always ready to travel in style. He's got 100-room royal suites permanently reserved in the fanciest hotels in London, Paris, and Switzerland. just in case he decides to pop by for a quick visit, you know, like normal people do with their vacation homes. So how much is all this worth? Well, experts say the Sultan's global real estate empire is worth billions. That's with a B. It's the kind of wealth that's hard to even imagine. While most of us are saving up for a down payment on a house, the Sultan's out here buying entire streets and islands like they're going out of style, ruling a nation of riches. In Brunei, what the Sultan says goes. He doesn't have to deal with pesky things like elections or parliament debates. He's got a group of advisors, sure, but at the end of the day, it's all up to him. It's like being the CEO, president, and king all rolled into one. But here's the crazy part. Brunei ain't some poor little country. It's loaded. We're talking one of the top 10 richest countries in the world based on how much money each person makes. And all that cash, it comes from oil and gas. Brunei's pumping out 160,000 barrels of oil every single day. That's a whole lot of money flowing into the country. Now, most countries have different companies drilling for oil, but in Brunei, it's all controlled by the Sultan. It's like he's got his own private oil company, but it's actually a whole country's worth of oil, and he gets to decide what happens with all that money. So how rich are we talking? Well, the Sultan's net worth is estimated at $30 billion. That's more than most countries' entire economies. He's richer than the Queen of England and even those Saudi kings you hear about. When it comes to monarchs, this guy's in a league of his own. But it ain't just about the Sultan being rich. The whole country's got it good. Brunei's gone from a bunch of fishing villages to a seriously loaded nation. They've got gold-top palaces everywhere, and the government's handing out all kinds of free stuff to the people. It's like living in a real-life Wakanda, but with oil instead of vibranium. And get this, the Sultan's in charge of pretty much every big company in Brunei. He owns the national airline, the big investment firms, even the rights to sell fancy cars. If there's money to be made in Brunei, you can bet the Sultan's got his fingers in that pie. Extravagant events and entertainment. Forget about your average catering. The Sultan's got meals that cost $1,000 per plate. Yeah, you heard that right. $1,000 for one meal. That's more than most people spend on groceries in a month. And we're not talking about some fancy steak dinner. These plates are loaded with stuff like Italian truffles, Russian caviar, and Kobe Wagyu beef. It's like eating money, but tastier. But the crazy food is just the appetizer. The real main course is the entertainment. The Sultan doesn't just hire a local band. Nah, he flies in the biggest stars on the planet. We're talking about A-list celebs like Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston. And these ain't regular concerts. The Sultan's dropping $5 million just to have these stars perform at his parties. That's more than most musicians make in a year, and he's spending it on one night. Now you might be thinking, okay, but where does he throw these parties? Well, how about his palace with 1,800 rooms? Yeah, that place. The Sultan turns his home into a whole new world for these events. We're talking exotic decor, albino peacocks and tropical birds just chilling around. It's like being inside a real-life Disney movie, but way more expensive. And it's not just about looking fancy. The Sultan's got teams of people making sure everything's perfect. There's 100 people just working on stuff like flowers, music, and food. It's like planning a wedding, but every single day. But here's where it gets really wild. For his recent Jubilee anniversary, the Sultan went all out. He hosted 3,000 people for 2 whole weeks. That's like throwing 14 New Year's Eve parties in a row. There were sports tournaments, business summits, and even a music festival. And get this, he had a custom Ferris wheel flown in from the UK just to impress some foreign leaders. It's like he's got his own portable amusement park. When guests show up to these parties, they get the royal treatment, literally. There's a whole welcoming committee that rolls out red carpets, gives out flower necklaces, and even sprays guests with fancy perfumes. It's like being in a movie premiere, but you're the star. The Sultan's most outrageous purchases. The Sultan's got a collection that'd make a Swiss banker jealous. But we're not talking about your average Rolex here. Nah, the Sultan's got watches covered in diamonds, and not just a few sparkly bits. These things are dripping in diamonds, worth millions each. It's like he's wearing the GDP of a small country on his wrist. But watches are just the start. The Sultan's got a thing for bags too. Not just any bags though. We're talking about custom-made handbags for his wives that cost more than most people's houses. These bags are so fancy they probably have their own bodyguards. Now you might be thinking, okay, but lots of rich people have expensive accessories. True, but the Sultan takes it to a whole new level. He's got solid gold spectacle frames flown in from Italy. Yeah, you heard that right. Gold, glasses from Italy. It's like he looked at regular designer shades and thought, nah, not fancy enough. But here's where it gets really wild. The Sultan doesn't just buy expensive stuff. He buys entire companies. He dropped $20 million on a hair care company in the UK. Why? Just because he liked their products. It's like going to the store for shampoo and buying the whole dang factory. And cars? Oh boy, we already talked about his 7000 car collection, but get this. He's got rides that were made just for him. We're talking about one-of-a-kind Ferraris, Porsches and Lamborghinis. These ain't cars you can just walk into a dealership and buy. The Sultan tells these companies what he wants and they make it happen. It's like having your own personal Hot Wheels factory, but life-size and way more expensive. But the real crazy stuff? It's the stuff most people would never even think of buying. The Sultan's got a private Boeing 747 with a living room and bedroom inside. It's like a flying mansion. And that $650 million yacht we mentioned earlier? It's got its own concert hall and missile defense system, because when you're this rich, why not have a floating fortress that can also host rock concerts? Now you might be wondering how this compares to other billionaires. Well, while guys like Bezos and Musk are busy trying to get to space, the Sultan's creating his own little world right here on Earth. He's not trying to colonize Mars. He's turning Brunei into his personal playground. And get this. The Sultan spends $20 million a year just on flowers for his palace. That's more than most people will make in their entire lives, and he's spending it on plants that'll be gone in a few days. It's like he's playing a game of how can I spend money in the most ridiculous way possible. Maintaining an empire of luxury, starting with his car collection. You don't just park 7,000 rides and call it a day. Nah, the Sultan's got a team of 30 car specialists just to keep those wheels spinning. These guys are like car doctors, but way fancier. They're dropping $2 million a year just to make sure every ride is perfect. That's more than most people spend on cars in their whole life. But cars are just the start. Remember those mega yachts? They need crews bigger than some cruise ships. We're talking hundreds of people just to keep those floating palaces afloat. Chefs, cleaners, engineers. It's like a small city on the water. And don't even get me started on the palaces. The Sultan's main crib, Istana Nur al-Iman, needs an army to keep it running. There's 100 chefs just for cooking. Imagine having that many people in your kitchen. You'd never have to make your own sandwich again. But it ain't just about the day-to-day stuff. The Sultan's got a whole team managing his money. They're called the Brunei Investment Agency, and they're in charge of $40 billion. That's more cash than some countries have in their banks. These guys are like the world's fanciest accountants, making sure the Sultan's always got enough cash for his next big purchase. Now you might think all this luxury management is smooth sailing, but even with all that money, there are challenges. The Sultan's got to keep his assets safe. That's why his planes and boats have missile defense systems. It's like having your own private military, but for protecting your toys. And it ain't just about protection. The Sultan's always got to stay on top of the latest tech. He's got teams upgrading his jets, boats and cars all the time. It's like being in a never-ending race to have the coolest stuff. But here's the real kicker. All this maintenance, it costs more than most countries' entire budgets. We're talking billions every year just to keep everything shiny and new. The Sultan's spending more on upkeep than most people will see in their entire lives. And it's not just about the big stuff. Even the little things are crazy expensive. The Sultan drops $20 million a year just on flowers for his palace. That's right, flowers. It's like he's trying to grow money on trees, but with petals. The impact of extreme wealth on Brunei. Chit-chat about how all that cash is shaking things up in Brunei. The Sultan's got so much money, he's basically funding the entire nation. Brunei's citizens are living it up thanks to all that oil money. They don't pay income tax, healthcare's free, and education, that's on the house too. It's like the whole country won the lottery. But here's the thing, not everyone's thrilled about how the Sultan's splashing his cash. Some folks are saying he's going overboard with the luxury. They're looking at those golden jets and diamond-covered cars and thinking, maybe we could use that money for something else? And it ain't just about the fancy toys. The Sultan's brother, Prince Jeffrey, got caught with his hand in the cookie jar. He spent billions of the country's cash on stuff like gold-plated toilets and life-size statues of himself getting busy. Yeah, you heard that right. Talk about a family drama. Now, Brunei's economy is riding high on all that oil money. But what happens when the wells run dry? That's the million-dollar question, or in this case, the billion-dollar question. The country's trying to branch out, but it ain't easy when you're used to swimming in oil cash. And get this, while the Sultan's living it up, not everyone in Brunei's feeling the love. There's still folks struggling to make ends meet. It's like having a neighbor who throws massive parties every night while you're eating ramen. But it ain't all bad news. The Sultan's wealth has turned Brunei into a real-life Wakanda. The place has gone from fishing villages to fancy palaces in just a few decades. That's the kind of glow-up most countries can only dream about. Still, there's some stuff that's got people worried. Brunei brought in some super strict laws a few years back. We're talking old-school religious rules that had the whole world talking. It's like the country's stuck between being super modern and super traditional. So what's the deal with Brunei's future? Well, it's complicated. The country's sitting pretty for now, but they gotta figure out what to do when the oil money stops flowing. It's like they're playing a giant game of Monopoly, but they're running out of properties to buy. The Sultan's extreme wealth has turned Brunei into a place that's hard to believe. Free healthcare, no taxes, and palaces everywhere. It sounds like a fairy tale. But even fairy tales have their dark sides. Brunei's got to figure out how to keep the party going without relying on just one golden goose. Legacy of opulence. With too many styles, the Sultan's been burning through cash like it's going out of style. But here's the thing. Even $30 billion ain't endless. Brunei's been pumping out 160,000 barrels of oil every day. But what happens when those wells run dry? It's like playing Monopoly with real money, but the bank's running low. Now, the Sultan ain't stupid. He's got plans to keep the cash flowing. There's this thing called the Brunei Investment Agency. These guys are like the world's fanciest accountants, managing $40 billion of the Sultan's money. They're investing in all kinds of stuff to make sure the royal family stays loaded. But it ain't just about keeping the Sultan rich. He's got to think about the next generation too. That's why he set up the Sultan Haji Hassan Al Bolkiah Foundation. It's like a giant piggy bank for his kids and grandkids. Smart move, right? Still, running a country on oil money ain't easy. Brunei's trying to branch out, but it's tough when you're used to that sweet, sweet petroleum cash. The Sultan's got these things called national development plans. They're supposed to help Brunei make money from stuff that ain't oil. But change is hard when you're used to living large. And here's where it gets real. All this crazy spending, it's changing Brunei big time. The country's gone from fishing villages to a real-life Wakanda in just a few decades. People there don't pay income tax, healthcare's free, and education's on the house. It's like the whole country won the lottery. But not everyone's thrilled about how the Sultan's splashing his cash. Some folks are saying he's going overboard with the luxury. They're looking at those golden jets and thinking, maybe we could use that money for something else. So what's the deal with Brunei's future? Well, it's complicated. The country's sitting pretty for now, but they gotta figure out what to do when the oil money stops flowing. It's like they're playing a giant game of Monopoly, but they're running out of properties to buy. The Sultan's extreme wealth has turned Brunei into a place that's hard to believe. Free healthcare, no taxes, and palaces everywhere. It sounds like a fairy tale. But even fairy tales have their dark sides. Brunei's got to figure out how to keep the party going without relying on just one golden goose.